Today we're going to learn one of the Spanish verbs for to have. I say one of because we use the verb to have to mean multiple things in English. For example, I have a book. In this case, the term have indicates possession of some type. I have a book. But check out this sentence. I have eaten. Am I talking about possession here? No, I'm just talking about something I've done. It's kind of like saying, I ate. In the first example, have is putting the verb eat in the past to mean something very similar to I ate. Spanish has two different verbs for to have. One is used for possession and the other is used for having done something or putting a verb in the past. Today we're learning the version that puts things in the past. You can generally tell if that's what you're dealing with by using the eaten test. So if you see have or has in English, see if there's a verb after it that's a lot like the word eaten. For example, which type of have are we dealing with in this sentence? I have been a student. This is putting the verb to be in the past. In fact, this would be a version of ser. It's kind of like I era a student, but it's different. It's a version of ser that we haven't learned yet. We previously learned the past tense conjugations of ser as era, eras, eran, and éramos. This version of ser is sido. Technically, it's what we call the participle, a version of the verb that's used to put things in the past, just in a different way. So here are a few more examples of participles being used. They have found it. She has been here. We have eaten. It has left. In each case, the word have or has is a form of today's verb haber. The verb haber means to have, specifically for putting things in the past. We have 5 forms of this to learn, but before we do, let's look at why this verb is so handy. Check out this sentence. I have been there. So if we change this to he, she, or it, the verb have changes to has. He has been there. But the word been hasn't changed. In fact, that form of the verb, the participle, never changes, as you can see. I have been there, he has been there, you have been there, we have been there, they have been there. What's changing instead is the verb to have. So there are 5 forms of haber to learn have, has, and so on. But once you do, you can start using the haber conjugations to put any verb in the past tense like this without memorizing all their past tense conjugations. So let's jump into our memory palace for haber. Now you've been hearing me pronouncing this word as haber, almost like a bear. That's because the letter H is always silent in Spanish. So let's learn this verb based on the mnemonic of a bear. There's a third business for us to visit, separate from the Ser Carnival and the Estar Magic Shop. This one is run by a big black bear, and it's a clothing shop, but he's a curmudgeonly bear that just grunts when he sees people. So he has 2 main things he says, and ah. Each of these starts with the letter H, but the H is silent. And this is pretty much his vocabulary. And ah. So generally he says to the youngsters and strange people he doesn't like, but he says ah to the people he likes. Right off the bat, when you and your friends walk in, he does not like you. So whenever he sees you, he says But when you start addressing him, he says, ah, because he wants all the attention on himself. So the word spelled H-E, means have as in I have. So associate it with yourself. Ah, on the other hand, means has as in he, she, or it, or usted, has. So again, associate a with the bear and with I, or yourself. He also doesn't like your group of friends around you, the motley crew of short and tall people that you bring with you. Remember, some of us are tall enough with the conjugations somos and estamos. He doesn't like these guys. So the conjugation starts with e, but it has mos at the end. Hemos. But for some strange reason, the bear has taken a liking to your friend on the hovercraft. This young guy with curly red hair who taught us estás and eres has made a good impression on the bear. So his conjugation starts with ah, and it's pronounced as. It ends with s. He also likes the pandas because they're fellow bears. Their conjugation is an. Remember that the H is silent in every case. Also, looking at all these words, if this helps, another way to think about these conjugations is to frame them as first person versus non-first person. I have and we have both start with e, but all the rest start with a. And the endings follow the universal patterns with n at the end for the pandas, mos at the end for we, and s at the end for the second person. So, quick quiz before we even practice putting these in context. Without looking, what is the bear's conjugation for he has, or she has, or it has? That's a. And what is an informal have for you have? That's as. What's the word for they have? This is an. And I have. That one's e. And then we have. Hemos. Now let's start using these words to put verbs in the past. First, we need to learn the participles, or the bin forms of ser and estar. They're pretty easy. So the bin form of estar looks a lot like estar. It's simply estado. And for ser, it's sido. So here's how the haber conjugations would look before estado. I have been is he estado. He, she, or it has been is ha estado. We have been is hemos estado. You have been is has estado. And they have been is han estado. For the ser versions, they look like this. He sido, ha sido, hemos sido, has sido, and han sido. Let's go ahead and practice some examples, and we'll start with estar only to keep it simple. So how would you say, I have been here? This would be, he estado aquí. He has been at the park. He ha estado en the park. We have been here. Hemos estado aquí. They have been well. Han estado well. You have been at the park. You has estado en the park. Once again, see how in all of these cases, estado doesn't change. The words that change are just the forms of haber before the participle estado. Now let's start using sido instead. We'll come up with some ser situations for this. So how would you say, we have been students? Hemos sido students. I have been the boss. He sido the boss. They have been students. Han sido students. You have been a good friend. Has sido a good amigo. Now we'll mix them up a bit. All of these sentences would use been in English, but in Spanish they'll use either sido for ser or estado for estar. So you'll choose which one it is, and then of course choose which conjugation of haber you need right before it. You have been at the park. You has estado at the park. We have been friends. Hemos sido amigos. I have been a student. He sido a student. She has been at the park. She ha estado en the park. You have been the boss. Has sido the boss. We have been here. Hemos estado aquí. They have been students. Han sido students. Here's a formal one. You have been the boss. Usted ha sido the boss. If you need more work on this, I recommend just practicing saying all of your haber forms at random, followed by sido or estado. For example, ha sido, han estado, hemos sido, has estado, and so on. These word combinations happen all the time in Spanish, so you want them to flow in your speech naturally as soon as you can. Also remember that this verb, haber, and all of its forms are only used to put something in the past, not to talk about possession. For example, check out the sentence, we have lots of problems to address. Would you use haber in this case? The phrase after have here is some sort of noun, so no, it's not being used to put a verb in the past, as in the phrase we have eaten. Instead, it's we have lots of problems, kind of like we have food. So remember to practice identifying this in sentences, even in your everyday English. You'll find that sometimes you use have to mean possession, but other times you use it to put things in the past.